Good afternoon, Mr. Faith. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Your Honor?
Very good. Make yourself comfortable, and then you can begin your opening statement.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for having me this morning, and thanks for taking time out of your lives to perform this important public service. I'd like to spend some time talking about my motivations to be here, what experiences that I bring to the table, and why I think those particular motivations and experiences are well suited to a role on the Court of Appeals. I talk about my motivation because I think that's the hardest thing to convey on paper, and I think it's simultaneously maybe the single most important thing in determining success in any job. And so if I succeed in nothing else today, I hope that I can convey to you that I'm here in a spirit of public service because I believe in the principle of equal justice under the law. And those are principles that I learned from my mom and my grandfather. My mom was a single working mom who simultaneously built a successful legal practice. And so it gave me a very rare experience to grow up with the law in a sense, to watch her build her practice at the same time she was raising me. And I learned a lot of things about the law. I learned a lot about work ethic. As you can imagine, raising a child while simultaneously building a practice is a Herculean endeavor. I can remember many a night getting up at midnight for a glass of water and finding her at the kitchen table working for her clients. And I think more than anything, what she taught me was the motivation that kept her going, that sustained that level of effort. And it's that she believed that her clients were entitled to justice. And she believed the role of a lawyer was to make sure they got it. Most of her clients were not powerful and were not wealthy, but she felt that they deserved to be treated according to the same legal standards as even the most powerful in our society, and that it was the job of lawyers to make that happen. And that's what inspired me to become a lawyer. And then it was my grandfather, my mom's dad, whose example of public service made me want to become a public servant. He served 38 years in the United States Marine Corps, fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And one thing I learned from him is you don't go to war, and you particularly don't go back to war after you know what it is, unless you really believe in what you're doing. And he did more completely than anyone I've ever known. He believed in the founding principles of our country, and he believed that people needed to step forward and sacrifice and do the important public work in order to make that promise true for another generation. And that's what has attracted me to the intersection of the law and public service. That's why I've been an assistant attorney general, an assistant U.S. attorney, a soldier in the United States Army, because I believe in public service. And I believe in the law, and I'm here because I believe the Court of Appeals serves a vital role in ensuring that justice is done in the vast majority of cases that will never make the headlines, but where the important rights of the litigants appearing before the court deserve to be vindicated every bit as much as in the more famous cases. And I believe that my public service record has prepared me for a position on the Court of Appeals, both in terms of the type of work that I've been doing and the attitude that I've brought to it. As a public service attorney, you're often having to work together with small groups of peers to work through a large workload in order to accomplish a public mission, the same type of work that the Court of Appeals does. When you think about it, the work of the Court of Appeals is very different than the work of, say, a district court judge. You're not individual master of your own domain. You're not managing process and parties. You have to combine an ability to work well with a group of peers with then an ability to go off and be somewhat monastic in working on your own for hours and days and doing a kind of scholarly work, research, writing, analysis. And I don't have to speculate whether or not I can do that type of work because that's the type of work that I've been doing in public service. In my current job as an assistant U.S. attorney, I'm one of 3 civil attorneys in the Southern District of Iowa. So between the 3 of us, we divide up all the work that the federal government has on the civil side in the Southern District. It's a huge workload. And I've learned that in order to do that, we have to be collegial even when we disagree, we can't be disagreeable because we don't have time for it. And I've also learned that in order to rely on others, you have to be reliable yourself. And so when you go off to your office to do the hours and days of quiet research and writing, you've got to do your part because everyone else is depending on you. And that's the experience and the attitude that I would bring to the Court of Appeals. And I've shared what I have with you about my public spirit motivations because I really believe that the spirit of public service is what is going to sustain me in the days and years of hard work outside of the spotlight that the Court of Appeals entails. I swore to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And it's that spirit that I bring to this job, and it's because of that spirit that I'm asking you to trust me when I say that I will put in the effort, the energy, and show the integrity that the people deserve in their Court of Appeals judge. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Faith, the question is asked of almost everyone who applies here who has not yet been a district court judge. Do you think district court judge experience is important for a position on the Court of Appeals?
I'm going to give you a very lawyerly answer, yes and no. I think that a multi-member court has the opportunity to be more than the sum of its parts by bringing people with a diversity of experience, and that by doing so, you can interject a broader base of experience than any one individual can possibly have. And so I think it is important that there be some people on the Court of Appeals who have that district court experience and can interject into the conversations a knowledge of the procedural details of how district courts operate. But I don't believe that everyone on the Court of Appeals needs to be a former district court judge. And in many respects, I think having worked as a practicing attorney with a small group of peers to accomplish a public mission, that my work is more analogous to what the Court of Appeals does than the work of a district court judge. A work of a district court judge, they are the masters of their domain. They're not working with peers, they're not working with groups for the most part. And they're largely managing the legal process. They're not spending most of their time research, writing, analysis, what the Court of Appeals does. And I think a practicing attorney in a writing-heavy practice is probably going to get more practice doing that sort of work than a district court judge. So I would submit to you that it's valuable to have people who have both been district court judges and people who bring other experiences.
Thank you.
Mr. Horbach?
No question.
Ms. O'Brien?
No questions.
Mr. Roberts? Ms. Conover?
No questions.
Mr. Bloom?
No question.
Mr. Goodman?
Mr. Faith, thank you for your application. We've had one other person apply that's in the Affirmative Civil Enforcement Division in the Northern District. Mr. Shank, are you acquainted with him?
I am.
Okay. And I want to get some sense of what draws you to this position and your application previously for the Supreme Court, because you're already in public service. Is it the judicial part of it, or are you drawn to the subject matters that are presented to the Court of Appeals, which we've discussed the percentages? I think there are 34% domestic and about 38% criminal cases. So is it the subject or the position of public service that interests you?
It's both. Certainly the diversity of issues that comes before the Court of Appeals appeals to me. I think if you look at my resume, I've been in a variety of different roles, practiced in a variety of different areas, and I like being exposed to new areas of the law and feel that I'm capable of assimilating, learning, practicing new areas, and that diversity keeps me going. In addition, I'm attracted to the judicial role because I view it as kind of an endpoint of what attracts me to public service, that you're serving a greater good. And as a public servant now, I'm already doing that, but I am still in an advocacy role. I am still trying to win on behalf of a client, albeit the client is the United States of America. I like the idea of being able to be a neutral decision maker who does not have to take an advocacy position, but can consider all factors and just try to reach a just result. That I think is kind of the ultimate public service, is making sure that a just result is reached, and that's ultimately up to our judges.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Diekman?
Thank you. Mr. Faith, if you were chosen as a Court of Appeals judge, what do you think the role of an appellate court judge would be in oral arguments given by attorneys? Do you believe they should be very active in asking questions, or what are your thoughts in that regard?
Yes, I believe that an appellate judge should be active in asking questions, but not to the point of being disruptive to a lawyer's presentation. I think the best judges are those who let the lawyer get out their initial points and then start asking probative questions as to the specific facts or areas of law that will be dispositive in the case, and that then really give the lawyers the time to answer, rather than just speaking for the point of making the judge's position clear.
Thank you.
Ms. Sinclair?
Have you ever applied to the district court, and if not, why not?
I have not. In part, that's because I'm in 5A, and at least in the last year or so, this has been on my radar. I haven't seen an opening down there. I've been asked a number of times whether I plan to apply when an opening comes. I'm not 100% certain. I'm seriously considering it. There are things about a district court judgeship that appeal to me, mostly the same things that intersect with the Court of Appeals, the research, the analysis, the writing, the thinking about legal issues. But my understanding is that that's a fairly small part of what a district court judge does, and that the district court deals a lot more with managing process, managing parties, keeping it along, and making the sort of quick decisions in a courtroom environment that keep things moving. And I frankly haven't had experience which is directly applicable to that, so I'm not sure whether I'm well suited to that. And so I would really have to do some soul searching the next time there's a position open of whether or not that's the right position for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sukup?
No questions.
Mr. Bevel?
No questions.
Ms. Law?
No questions.
Mr. Diaz?
No questions.
Mr. Berger?
No questions.
Ms. Bowden?
No questions.
Ms. Pearson?
No questions.
We do have some time. Does anybody want to ask a second question? Well, I guess we're done, and I really appreciate you coming, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.